This episode is sponsored by Heather Kehoe, Boundaries Over Business coach and founder of the Hustle Culture Haters Club.
I'm Megan.
I'm CJ.
And I'm Erica.
And this is the Her Podcast.
You guys, we are incredibly excited to be sitting down with psychologist, best-selling author, and public speaker Dr. Jody Carrington. Dr. Jody is known for speaking passionately and humorously about resilience, burnout, mental health, leadership, grief, and trauma, and how reconnection is the answer to so many of the root problems we face in our society. We get to talk with her today about emotional regulation. Megan asked some really great questions that are very tangible about her baby, Asher, in this episode, which you guys will want to hear. We talk about how this generation is really changing, how social media is impacting us. We talk about role clarity and how it's changing in the modern world. We also really dive into burnout and what the root of that is. You guys, you know this episode is really fun. Dr. Jody really showed up with the passion and the energy as she always does. Take out your notebooks because you guys are going to want to take some notes. Enjoy. I understand.
What was your favorite
Best
podcast? Smartless.
Oh,
I've heard of it.
Jason Bateman.
Oh my God.
I haven't even listened yet.
Is it funny?
Okay, what episode?
Stop.
What? I will.
All of them.
Okay.
This is you, but it's these three guys.
Okay.
And they are the fucking funniest.
Oh, we're not the funny. Well,
No,
but
pretty
listen,
funny.
But listen, but together you do, right? You have your, like when you said,
I'm funny. It's okay.
I'm like, I can't
They're like,
take
we're not
any
funny. I'm
credit.
like,
yeah, I carry it, but thank you very much. but that's what I love about like the three of them. And then they went on a tour. Mm-hmm. And so it's Jason Bateman and Will Arnett and Sean Hayes.
Oh, okay.
It is too much.
Okay.
Like I am by myself losing my fucking mind.
I love
the way that they know each other and they undercut each other, but they are the kindest humans on the planet. Like there's such a jam about it. And I'm like so jealous that I don't have a co-host because they really
There's a
play
nice
off.
synergy.
well, and I think that was one of my problems when I did it by myself. Is I was like, I can only do this for so long until I'm like, I need to interview whatever. But I would say what I find funny about our dynamic is like sometimes I think people must think I'm mean because I tease. And I'm like, they don't know our dynamic, but this is a totally appropriate joke. But I'm sure some people are like, I can't believe
They're
she
just
says
tuning in
that.
for the first time.
They're tuning in. They're like, Erica's like rank. I'm like,
But if they watched on YouTube, they'd see our facial
all of us
expressions.
lying.
Well, and I think that's the point, right? Like, so you want them to come back for more,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
if they get a particular episode where it's like, what the fuck's happening there? And there's so many questions about like, when I'm listening to Smartless about like, God, I wonder what it's like when so then they went on tour together and Bateman said, we all need to stay in the same hotel room. And so they really dish about like, fuck, like on the way here today, Sean, we have a driver, but Sean has his GPS up and every 2 minutes he's announcing, okay, 6 minutes left, guys. Okay, 5 minutes left. And it, like you get such an insight into how they interact with each other, which is what I think people always want.
Maybe we should dish into that eventually.
I would say our
behind the scenes.
Yeah, our solo episodes, we always say like we meet with a guest and we're a bit more poised and ready to interview, and then we do a solo and it's like gloves are off in a bad
It's
way,
like
but
when
like
you
our
undo-
walls are down and we're like fidgeting and we're like, guys, we're just like our guard is down, so there's a lot more openness of conversation,
Which gives people a little bit of more of an inside view that they like.
Well, and I think we all want that, right? Because it's like really great to be able to be like, yeah, we have a podcast and everything's made and we're going to talk about like how we can change the fucking world. But also, I don't have a bra on and I really don't like being a mom. So, you know what? Fuck it.
Well, this is the connection piece, is it not?
What?
This is the connection piece. Feeling seen.
Yes.
You're like, Jody, it's the book that you wrote.
Jody's like,
Oh, right. The segue
I'm trying to
into
volley
the
it
book.
to
Okay.
you.
Oh, I got it. No, I fucking dropped it and
We
then
teed
rolled
it up.
over it and then
we were
my bra fell off.
like, hey Jody,
I know. No, see, we got to work on our dance. I'm a virgin. It's
okay.
I'm running my own show. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Connection.
You're usually
Oh my God.
Who
What kind
talks
of word
about
is connection?
You wrote a whole book on it, lady.
God.
Tell me how you clearly feel about connection.
You know what? I'm over connection. You know what I'm really much more interested in? Reconnection.
Yes. Okay, go off.
Entirely different topic. So connection's the easy part. And we've talked, I've built a whole platform around connection and how we're so disconnected and all those things.
Yeah.
but connection is the easy part, right? Like when we're like, okay, I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to connect to myself. I'm going to journal. Okay, awesome. What's going to happen when you stop? What's going to happen? Okay, I fall in love with somebody. We went on our second date. Everything's fantastic. Oh my God, we're so connected. Okay, so what's going to happen when that fucks up? Like what's going to happen when you have your first fight or your 47th fight? I really want to be a great mom, and I've like done all these readings, and I've fucking pureed all their baby food and put everything in goddamn ice cube things, and I'm, I don't know, like I have lavender scented fucking dolphin pools for my birth, and everything's fantastic, right? You know what I mean? And then what about the first time when you're like, I actually think you need to, sorry, I was wrong. I actually don't want to be a mother. I would like to donate you to anybody. Is anybody open to that? Like, is that wrong? Like, I'm sure that happened. So the issue isn't about connection. It's really about reconnection. And the number one predictor between couples who make it and couples that don't, John Gottman would say, is not how much you fight, how much sex you have, how much money you have. It's your ability to repair or reconnect in times of distress, right? Because conflict is a part of any relationship. And I think about that so often when I'm thinking about the organizations that I work with, or, like even, this is going to be a hot topic, so you can cut this, but like the idea of the conversations right now around trans kids and, what do we teach in schools and what don't we teach in schools? Like, holy fuck, the conversation is really around how do we stay connected about this? How do we have conversations with the same intention? We all love our children and we want what's best for our children, and our ideals about what that might look like or sound like or feel like or smell like is going to be different. And if I'm going to learn from you, there has to be some reconnection. When you say something that I think is so spitting and hateful, I have to have the wherewithal, the ability to regulate my emotion and come back in. And I think it's really the reconnection that needs to be the issue. And if you think about, welcome to my show. If you think about
this is great. Here for it.
If you think about anybody who's successful in this world, if you think about anybody like your best boss that you've ever had, if you think about the best friend in any season, right? The best times you've ever had with your partner, it is when that person shows up in a regulated state. When they are like, okay, tell me more. Right? Or a boss who like everything just goes absolutely fucking crazy, and it's like, this is awful, we've lost $1 million, or we've just had a massive complaint, whatever the deal is, and they don't go like, holy fuck, I don't have a fucking clue. Oh my God, why did you do that? What is wrong with you? This is ridiculous. What you want is somebody to be like, okay, this is a tough one. We're going to figure it out. Okay.
But like, let's come to the table and figure it out.
Right. Yeah. That's emotional regulated. Right.
Yeah.
And when we think about the most serene moments with our partners, however many we've had, it is the issue where, you feel most connected, and you're in those connection places the most when you're regulated. Right. It doesn't mean that you can't have passionate conversations. It doesn't mean that you can't be like, I completely disagree with you, babe. Like, it's not how it's going to roll here. And if you can have those conversations when you're regulated, my God, I love my husband when he's regulated.
The
when
difference it makes.
Holy fuck, I made the wrong choice, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I had a lot of options, in 2008. I really did. Back in Billy Bob's, there was a lot of options I could have took home. And I got this fucking farmer who blows his nose like...
Jody,
a farmer's son.
I'm married to a farmer.
I know, and they're fucking good.
They're great men.
They're good humans. They're just dysregulated a lot.
I was gonna be like, we were on a walk yesterday, and I was like, my nose is stuffy, and my friend turned to me and said, just do the farmer.
She did it.
I tried.
You tried. And you're like, it's all over your shirt.
I was so stuffed, nothing happened. I was like,
okay.
I was like, okay,
That's even worse.
Let's just keep walking. No, I'm sorry. I totally. That was a beautiful segment. And I was like, boogers. Yeah, so sorry about that.
No, got it. I can't.
Since we're talking about regulation, I have a selfish question.
Yeah.
That I bawled my face off earlier to CJ about.
Today you were bawling?
Yes.
Oh, tell me more.
I will.
Here begins therapy.
Here begins. Megan might cry on the podcast for the very first time. My selfish question is, how do we help our children regulate when they're feeling big emotions and navigating like new, hard, tough experiences? And my personal experience is my 6, almost 7-year-old has switched schools, and he's in a new learning environment, new kids, new teacher, new everything, and he's having a tough time.
Yeah, baby.
He's having a tough time, and his response is often anger, hands-on, mean words, And he's literally, I'm not being the mom that's like, my kid's the best. He's literally the sweetest little human ever. And to see him feeling like this and not being able to know how to talk to him about it is like the toughest parenting move so far that we've been navigating. And so I know that that's probably a common thing with parents trying to help their kids regulate the big emotions. So any advice or tips or tricks you have?
I got a lot. Number one, the chaos is necessary to learn the calm. Okay. So do you want me to tell you more about that? The chaos is necessary to learn the calm. He needs to feel all of it, and he'll be better for it. Okay. When I ask any parent what they want, okay, so as a child psychologist, I've been doing this for 20 years. I think about my own personal children. When people say to me, you finished a sentence. Here's what I wish for him. What's his name?
Asher.
No, like my baby.
Even Asher?
My oldest is Asher. Yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you know what it means happy?
Yeah. He was born on Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Happy and blessed.
Baby doll.
Yeah.
And now look at him ripping your fucking soul out.
Seriously.
Okay, anyway,
Accurately to that point.
Nothing. So unhappy.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Asher. Anyway, okay, back to Ash. Okay, I call mine Smasher.
So do I. So do I.
He's so not a Smasher.
Oh, mine is.
Mine is not a Smasher. He's read every book on the planet, and like he has deep, meaningful. Mom, can we just talk about? I think I'm straight, but I'm not sure. I'm like, okay, tell me more. Like, anyways, we can talk about my Asher later. Okay, so finish the sentence. Here's all I want for Asher. I just want him to be
happy.
Yeah, guess what? Nobody's fucking happy all the time. Okay? Don't be dumb. Who wakes up every day and goes, I'm happy. Right? I'm just so fucking happy with my body, with my friendship group. I'm happy with my marriage. I'm happy with the clothes that I'm wearing, like whatever, right? Nobody's happy all the time. And the most well-rounded, connected human beings have the capacity to feel every emotion. And you can't create a script for every emotion unless you go through it. I can tell you all day long what it's like to feel futility or sadness or that you don't fit in or that you've been rejected, right? I can tell you, I can prepare you. I don't want you to feel any of those things. I don't want my 3 babies to feel any of those things. I have an Asher who's 13 and my twins are 10. And they are the most remarkable humans on the planet. And I just want to save them from everything. Okay. And that will be the biggest disservice that we do for our children because you need a script. He now at 6 years old is writing a very cool script about the fact that it feels yucky and foreign and I'm unclear where I fit in this world. And then every time I come home, I get to land in my mom's lap and I get to figure out where the people I love are. Like that's what I want for Asher. I want Asher to know that he can do hard things and then he can come home and fall apart. And when he has that script, it's going to serve him well when he's in high school and his heart gets broken. And I think we make a massive mistake all the time in giving all of our kids medals, right? This is the pendulum swing, right? Because there is such a guiltiness, particularly as moms in this place, because we don't spend nearly as much time with our own children as our mothers did, because we're caught in this thing. We're going to talk about this tonight. We're caught in this conundrum where for the first generation, for the first time in the world, women have had so much freedom in creating companies and building businesses and, marching and having a voice. And we have never been in a position of such a lack of role clarity. Okay. And so we are now observed by a generation that had much more role clarity, which included stay home, have a baby, have a few, actually, if you have more than one, because just one, then something's actually wrong with you. And then if you could just really make good food and keep a clean house, like this is the plan, right? And there's something very beautiful about role clarity, right? You know the expectation. So 2 generations ago, like there was never a question in your mind that you would speak outwardly, that you would do anything other than the expectation. And if you had a penis, this was your job. You were going to find one of those most beautiful women and you were going to bed her down and get a few kids and then provide, whatever that looked like, right? Beautiful. So much beauty to that. And many people would say, oh God, I think I would have been so much better in a previous generation, or I wished I lived in a different time, or all those things, which I get. And the thing we're often talking about is the role clarity. Okay. And the thing we are fighting in this generation then is for freedom. because there is also such a risk of having real clarity is then we have no freedom. So we're in this position of moms in particular in this season, I think, where we are feeling so terrible about spending less and less time with our children because we have this freedom that we can go on a weekend retreat, that we can speak around the world, that we can make more than our partners do, that we can't, you fucking rights, we can be the CEO of a company. You watch me. I'm going to show you how to do it. But then it also comes with those questions in our head. I'm nothing what my mom did. And my mom is my most lauded soul in the world. She's the most amazing woman I've ever met. She made a really good fucking turkey. I don't know how to make a turkey.
No.
Like, I don't know how to, I don't actually like the motherhood role.
Yeah.
I don't know how to cook. I really don't like to clean. I but I adore my children. And when we're in this place and then they have big emotions when we're with them, it crushes our soul. So our great-grandparents, it's estimated that our great-great-grandparents looked at their children 72% more of the time than we look at our babies. Okay. So there will be a cost to that as we transition into this, just 2 generations later. We know in so many ways we're doing a disservice to our children for the lack of face-to-face connection we give to them, right? We need it, they need it, we know that. So then when they get sad, when they have these big emotions that's anything other than what we want for them, which is them to be happy, we get distressed. And the issue is he needs to feel all of those things.
Yeah.
And we just need to look after you so you can allow him to feel them.
Oh. Megan needs to be emotionally regulated.
Well, and Megan needs just to feel it all.
Yeah.
Like that this is absolutely okay. He should be struggling in this moment. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him. It doesn't mean it's actually that you made a bad choice, that he doesn't, I think about this all the time, when I navigate, people who are divorced, working with, babies half time with mom and dad, or like they only see dad, or parents who get deployed to Afghanistan and they only get to see their baby once a month or, once every 6 months, right? Like how do people survive that, right? How do, 1 in 4 children will lose a parent by the age of 18. How do you navigate the stories around them? And it's so much about like the bar is really so low for what our babies need. They just need you to show up. And you hold space for their emotion and you don't try to fix it and make them happier. At least you, honey, it's okay. Look at mommy. Woo! It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Here's some snacks. Okay? And then we give everybody a fucking medal. So Asher plays in this, hockey tournament where there's 8 teams and he loses all fucking 7 games and they still get a medal?
Yeah.
I think that's fucking dumb. You lost. You suck. You should try a new sport. Okay?
I think it's
Your goalie's a sieve.
I'm
Sorry,
like this.
WHL dad. Fucking Jason. Your kid is not going to make
Jason.
it.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, but I feel the same way about medals, like very strongly.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, here's the deal. I didn't win a single thing in high school. I never won a trophy. I don't have a single plaque with my name on it. Nothing. And I'm hella confident. Because I'm like, it's all good. And I had a dad who would have been preaching this stuff to me, like, it's all good. So I'm like, I agree with you. I think what we're also doing by giving every kid a medal is I'm like, we're also taking away from the feeling of real accomplishment when you really do win something. Because you've put in the time. Now it's like, well, I have 100 of these because I just showed up. And yes, showing up sometimes is a win for some people. But no, I agree with you.
Well, it really degrades what the medal means or what
Do you feel like you're on the verge of burnout? Are you stretched thin, exhausted, discouraged, and desperately ready to reclaim your time in your life? Or perhaps you've been embracing the hustle culture narrative and you are beginning to question if it lives up to the hype. The constant grind, being on call 24/7 and dedicating every waking hour to the grind may be leaving you feeling disconnected, exhausted, and ready to throw in the towel. Allow me to introduce you to Heather Kehoe. If you haven't had the pleasure of meeting Heather or following her on social media to see her killer content, you absolutely need to check her out. She is a coach specializing in overcoming burnout through setting boundaries. Heather hit rock bottom and experienced burnout in her career, which made her realize that there must be more to life. Since then, she's been on a journey to embrace boundaries, over burnout, and guide other women to discover the same freedom. Heather encourages people to stop creating their own chaos, identify and prioritize what truly matters in life, and live life on your own terms. You need to check out Heather's 4-week Boundaries Over Burnout Reset program. It includes one 60-minute Zoom call with Heather each week for 4 weeks. Heather has generously provided our community with an exclusive discount code. Use the code HER100 to get $100 off your 4-week reset. You need to check out Heather on Instagram at @TheRealHeatherKehoe or find all the information you need on her website, thehchc.com, which stands for the Hustle Culture Haters Club. Use code HER100 to receive a $100 discount off of your program.
So back to Asher. He's doing fantastic, and his mom should also be sad and worried and scared. This is the part about parenting that nobody tells us, right? That it's fucking brutal.
Yeah.
And that it only gets worse.
My heart hurts.
Yeah. But it should. I mean, that's the measure of love, right?
Right.
And I think that I often sit in such reflection of what my mom felt or what my father felt that I never really paid attention to because we don't have to as children.
Right.
And now as a parent, I often think about like, oh my God, the sacrifice. And like, they have no idea how much I think about or, dream about or hope about or lose sleep over who they are and what they are. And, there's the last story in Feeling Seen is about my Asher. He joins the U11 hockey team and he's not a hockey player. Okay. So like he's just doing this to appease his mom and dad, and we want him in a social sport, and we all love hockey, and so he's going to do it for 1 more year and then that's it. But last year, 2 years ago, goes to tryouts. Okay. So you're there with all of the teenagers and they throw everybody on the ice and they just see where you land. Okay.
Right.
So I didn't realize that he had just moved up this particular year, and this was apparently the first time that you don't go in the dressing room as a mom. I wasn't aware. And so I go down in between these two games and I'm like, I've got his Gatorade and his little treat bag, and I'm like gonna just love on him a little bit. Yeah. So I come into the dressing room and I'm like, hey, and I'm already too far in before I recognize that my mistake. Okay. So we live in Olds, and so there's a junior hockey team there. So the Olds Grizzlies, the 3 boys that are the Grizzly players, are there sort of helping, and they're in the dressing room just fucking all jacked. And all of these kids are sitting around. And I look at my son and I'm like, hey, I got you a Gatorade. And he says to me, Mama. I was like, oh, fuck my life.
Oh, because that's what he says when he's mad?
That's what he calls me all the time. Oh. He still does. And he's 13. He said, Mama. And I said, mm-hmm. He said, you see that kid over there? The room goes dead silent. And I'm like, mm-hmm. The big red-faced dude. He's like, do you know what he just said to me? I'm like, he said, if I sat by him, Mama, that he would break my fucking shins. I was like, oh, okay. And I don't know what to do. And I'm back in a high school dressing room in Viking, Alberta, Canada in this moment. I feel like I'm like a fucking loser like I was in grade 9. And so I'm like, oh, this is all that came out of my mouth. You know what I said to him? Good thing you didn't sit by him then. That's what I said. And then I backed up out of the room and I was like, okay, good game. Good job. I ran up the fucking stairs. I went to my husband and I was like, Aaron, Asher's gonna die. And he's like, what the fuck were you doing in the dressing room? I'm like, I didn't know the rule. I didn't know. And he's like, Jody, he'll be fine. So he comes out of the dressing room and he's sobbing. He said, Mom, it was so bad. Like, this particular kid wouldn't, he closed the gate on me. He didn't want me to be on the ice. He said, like, you're such a loser. Why are you skating like this? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, I really want to quit. And I'm like, okay, we got a couple of choices. We know that this kid's going to make a different team than you, right? Because we know we've always played on the C team. This is another C year. We love the kids who make the C team. These are our people, right? Yeah. So we just got to get through these tryouts. And he's like, do you think you could call his mom? That's what he said to me.
What do you? Yeah, because then what do you say to that?
You say yes.
Okay.
So I get out and I say to Marty, okay, do you know this kid? Do you know the mom? Oh yeah. Really, farm family, rough and gruff. They got 3 boys. I was like, do you think I should call her? And she's like, fuck no. And I said, but I think I have to. Like, Asher just asked me, and I think this is what we do. Like, I think that the anti-bullying rhetoric is ridiculous because kids are not supposed to solve this problem on their own. right? This kid who was saying those words is 12.
Yeah.
So I said to Aaron, like, what are we going to do? He's like, I'll meet him at the fucking bike rack is what we're going to do. And I was like, no.
He sounds like my...
I know. Well, I mean, right? And
Calm
then
down.
my personal mom was like, you know what? We'll just change schools. That's fine. I was like, oh, okay. I decide that I should text this mom. So
Okay.
I get her number off TeamSnap. And I text her and I say, hey, and like even as I'm texting, I'm high pitched texting.
Oh,
I don't know if
totally.
you're Hey.
Lots of exclamation.
Yeah, like little smiley faces.
face.
I just our sons are on the same hockey tryout team, and you know, my son came home last night and he struggled a bit at the tryout. I just want to make sure that he wasn't being a jerk to your kid, because I think there was some sort of confrontation, and I just want to make sure he wasn't causing any issues. Can you give me a call when you have a second? 33 seconds later, the phone rings. I'm like, fuck. I'm sitting in the Costco parking lot. So I answer the phone. I'm like, hi. And she doesn't even say hello. She says, this text here, is this code for my kid's being a dick to your kid?
And you're like, you read right through me.
You're like, yes, ma'am, it is.
I didn't fool you.
She ran it through momtranslation.com.
Oh my God. And so
The
I was
BS
like,
meter.
listen, I said, we haven't even met. I know of you, and I know how amazing you are, and that you've got these 3 boys. I said, but here's what Ash told me last night, is that he went into the dressing room. He's a year younger than your son, and I know all of these things happen sometimes, but I think he told him he was going to break his fucking shins. And this mom said, oh, no, I mean, he wouldn't say, I mean, he's pretty rough and tumble, he's the youngest of 3 boys, but like, he wouldn't. And I was like, oh, you know what, you could, I mean, this could be Asher, and if that's the truth, then I'm gonna go home and we'll figure this out.
Yeah.
If they end up on the same team, though, I'd love them to figure this out, and if we can help them, that would be amazing. She's like, don't you worry about it, I'm gonna sit him down tonight. I was like, no, like, I don't need to. And so anyway, she was great about it.
Yeah.
So I don't hear a thing from her. So we come home that night, and Asher doesn't, he comes through the door and he says to me, did you talk to her? I said, yeah, honey, I tried, but I haven't heard back from her. He's like, okay, well, that's all we can do, right? And I was like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, we got each other's back. That's cool. That's all you need to know, right? Is that like, this wasn't acceptable behavior, and we do our best to figure it out. And if they come to the table, cool. If they don't, they don't. So next morning she texts, and there's this like fucking 2-page text, and it's awesome.
Okay, great.
It's awesome. I put it verbatim in the book. And
I haven't got to that part yet.
it's the last story. And she said, she's like, I just wanted to thank you and Asher. I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you last night. I hope you both slept well. My husband and I take this very seriously. And so we sat down and talked to our son, and he indeed said those things. And he started to cry when we asked him about it, and he just said he was just trying so hard to be cool. And I was, so I'm reading this, I'm sobbing, and she's like, so I asked him what he could do about it, and he suggested that he needs to write Asher an apology note. So at breakfast this morning, he took out the paper, did it all on his own, and so he will have that ready for Asher tonight at hockey practice. And you can rest assured we take these things very seriously. This wasn't just something that we made him do. He came up with that idea. So thank you for telling me, and I can't wait to see you at the rink.
Wow. That could not have gone any better.
I was going to be like, but I don't think that's everyone. Like, unfortunately, I think that's not everyone's experience. I love that was yours.
You know what? And here's the issue. I think that it would be more of the issue if we did it one-on-one and we did it in a regulated way.
Yes.
I think that we all appreciate this. And this happened 3 weeks ago. Liv, my daughter, who's going to go to jail, she was she's
like, not really, but like,
she might.
She's
near
a
her.
feisty
oh,
spicy.
you just said that. I was like, wait, how old are your kids?
She's 10. So she's amazing.
Juvie is what it's called.
Oh God, yes. Anyway, she looks like me, sounds like me, talks like me, and like is sent directly to teach me every lesson I didn't learn yet.
I have one of those.
And so I get a phone call from a sleepover mom. And Liv was texting me saying, like, this is kind of hard. And, there's 2 other girls staying over tonight. Like, I really wish you could come pick me up. And I'm like, oh, mom's on the road. And daddy's asleep. He's not. Like, I'm like, okay, but like, this is how we do it. We'll come in the morning, whatever. And so what happened and whatever. So somebody said something she didn't like. So the next morning, the sleepover mom texts me and says, hey, I think we should jump on a call. And I was like, okay. She's like, yeah, there's something, we should probably talk about after the sleepover that you should know about. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, Gwendolyn, what do you want? So she calls, and I'm in some fucking town where I was doing talking. And she's like, so I just wanted to tell you that Olivia was writing some things that were quite disturbing after this fight, because she said that she just didn't know she wanted to be alive, you know? And so in my head, I was like, fuck my life. I'm the only child psychologist on the planet who's going to have a fucked up kid. And I cannot believe she did this. And I'm like, why are you telling me this? And then, you know, then it was in my head where I was like, you know what, Gwen? Thank you so much. This is what a village looks like. And I will have that conversation with her tonight. Her dad and I will sit down and talk to her about it. And I want you to know, like, if there's ever anything that happens with your baby girl, right, that we have eyes on each other. They're always going to do this stuff. And Livy loves your daughter. And I know that this fight's going to, you know, she's like, I know this will just go past it. But like, you know, don't you worry. And then we texted like for the rest of the night, kind of, right? Like, we're in completely different circles. I don't even know that, like, I think I've seen this one time. But I'm like, okay, like, it's like how you receive that information and how you can talk about it becomes so critical, because I think really you can wear all the fucking white pink t-shirts you want in the anti-bullying rhetoric. Kids are assholes.
Yes.
And they're supposed to be assholes,
Yeah.
and they don't know how to figure it out, and they should call each other out and speak about men poorly and women poorly. And it's our responsibility as big people to be like, eyes on me, back here. Not what we do here. Come here. And you can't talk to them in a herd, because then they'll fucking eat you for breakfast. You got to cut them from the herd, and you got to do that one-on-one. But we often don't. We often, you know, the coach or the bus driver or the whatever is like, hey, boys will be boys. You guys fuck off. You know?
Yeah.
We need that. Grayson, Tyson, Lyson, Kyson, Myson. Come into my
Dyson.
yeah, whoever you are.
Yeah.
Dyson.
Dyson.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Dyson. See, that could be funny.
Yeah.
Gold star.
Do you got a Dyson? Do you got a Dyson?
No, I definitely don't.
Oh, we sure don't. Okay, you touched on something that I think is really important, and that it takes a village. And I'm curious, because I think that I was in a session earlier today, and the speaker was talking about that and the lack of village that we have now and how we have to recreate it again. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think that, you know, I was reflecting, like, as a parent now, I watch my sister who lives in a different town, and I feel like has like a big parenting kind of like circle. Like, lots of her kids are, you know, her kids are the same age as her friends' kids. And so there's just like a lot more communication and community around it versus, I'm not saying that doesn't exist for us, but I feel like I'm looking and Andrew and I were having this conversation about like, oh, like he doesn't really have like a little best buddy yet. Like, we're going to have to start planning these things and stuff like that. And I think I just don't have the experience necessarily with it yet. But I think back to my mom and playing on the road, you know, with all the other neighborhood kids, and somebody's mom would yell at you that it was, you know, to stop doing that or whatever. And you just listened. But I feel like there's such a lack of that now.
Well, and I think we get a little bit scared to do that for other people's children. I think it's really about the relationships that we build as adults, though. And, you know, I think we can't put that on our kids to be able to do that, right? And knowing who our kids' friends are, knowing who their parents are, becomes imperative.
Yeah.
And I think that because there's so much need for eyes on now, because the inundation of social media has fucked us up as parents equally as much as it's affecting our children. And we don't talk about that nearly enough. We're the first generation of parents to have social media, and we didn't grow up with it. And this is the first generation where kids know substantially more about the most important communication device as human beings than their parents. And the other thing that I think is fascinating is that we've also never had this much access to our children. And I had a mom come up to me. I was talking to Michigan last week, and it just really made me think about this. So she said, you know, thank you for your talk. And she was crying, and, you know, like, I'm really thinking a lot about our son. He just went to university, and, you know, he took this big risk and went, and we're proud of him, but he struggles with so many mental health issues. And so, you know, his father and I are very worried about him, and we think about him all the time. And, you know, like, we have tracked him, like we have his Find My Phone on our phone, and he doesn't necessarily know that. So she said every night what we do is, like, we just watch to see if he's leaving his bedroom, because we can see where he's at, you know, on the phone. And I was thinking, holy fuck, no wonder we are such an anxious, emotionally debilitated group, because like
Yes.
when I left for college, like my mom said that was the first time she's ever slept, because I had one opportunity, like we had a phone call, like we had a phone on the wall in
Yes.
residence, and then if somebody had a boyfriend, you could only speak like one night a week to your parents, and like mom was like, I knew you were drinking, I knew you were out having a good time, as you should be, but like there's not a fucking thing I could do about it, because I didn't know anything. Now we constantly know. I mean, everybody checks their kids' snap maps. You try to be cool, but you're still not, and you're on the snap face and you're doing all the things, and you're, you know, and if I'm not comparing myself to all my other kids as friends, like I just think about how many moms know what's going on with their teenage children, and they're like, oh yeah, she's doing this, and yeah, okay, I know what's happening. And then we're watching all the other moms and what they're doing, and all the other dads and what they're doing. Like, I mean,
Are we trying to control it too much as well?
well, I just think comparison is the thief of all joy.
Correct. Yeah.
And we will always do that, because you think about the old adage of our grandmother sitting around, kibitzing about the boys, or we would get together on the weekends and talk about like gossip, huh?
Yeah.
And so that has always been a thing. We've just never had this much accessibility to it.
Yeah.
I can text you anything, anytime. We're out at this event and I can see somebody and I'd be like, oh my God, did you just? I mean, we text each other in a session. Right. There's not even like, we can't even feel a moment without feeling as though we have to. And it's this really, I think, transactional connection, because you will never automate relationship. Our ability to sit down and talk about what we just saw today is so much more important than if I were just to text you and say like, oh yeah, this is what I experienced today, right? If I come home at the end of a work trip and I get to sit with Aaron and have a glass of wine and talk about like what we did and what I learned, and like this happened and this happened and this happened, is so much better than when I just text him like, oh yeah, no, I'm at this golf course and it's so fantastic, right? Like we feel it differently. Our dopamine, our oxytocin, like the neurochemicals in our body change significantly in a much different way when we're in the same room. So if we did this podcast over Zoom, which is fine, like technological advances allow us.
It's very different.
Right. Technological advances, though, allow us to do those things like we could have never even imagined before. So technology isn't the problem, right? It's how we use it that's the issue.
All of our brains are exploding.
Seriously. Like, mic drop.
No, it's so good. Well, it's interesting that you speak about that, because this whole conversation started with reconnection, and it's like the most cliche thing to say right now, but like we're such a disconnected people while having the most access to each other. Right? And it's like a false sense of connection that we're all really living in.
Truly. And I mean, like I often talk about now, there's such a sense of relationships, the breadth of relationships are so much easier to cultivate, but the depth is so wanting. And I think about that, in relationships, why affairs are so easy, because the breadth of relationship is just, we want to feel seen, we want to feel understood, or we want to feel like somebody's attracted to us, huh? But when shit goes wrong, when you get the diagnosis, when you get the call that your baby's in the hospital or whatever the deal is, what you need to ground you is the relationships that have the depth.
So what are some of the things that we do then? We're talking about social media. We're talking about emotional dysregulation. We're talking about letting our kids like feel hard things. You know what I mean? And what are some things that we can do to actually help regulate ourselves?
The happiest people among us, it boils down to two things. And the research around this is really interesting. Agency and gratitude. And we are most grounded in our ability. We're back to the best parts of ourselves when we feel as though we have agency over the things that we do, our lives, which is we are in control of, right? And you're actually in control of nobody else but you. And so you think about if you've ever had a panic attack or you've been in the middle of an anxiety something, I mean, you never feel like so out of control, right? Yeah. But when you are grounded in your body and you have agency over the fact that like, I can choose today to respond to Asher in this way. I can choose to go for a workout or not. I can choose to call my husband and take a deep breath before I have this hard conversation. I can choose to do this podcast episode in a way that, puts me in a place where I'm like, no, people need to hear what we need to say today. When you feel as though you have agency over your life, and then you follow that with gratitude, when you, and gratitude is like this, very generic thing that we start throwing around so much, right? But when you truly understand the power of switching the narrative from all the things that can go wrong, because it is so much easier to commiserate. It is so much easier to commiserate than it is to be able to sink in with people and look at the things that you're thankful for. We've almost been taught not to do that, right? Not to brag, not to be invested in, like, plan for all the things that can go wrong, because then you'll be ready for it. I mean, if you've been raised by a farmer, you're particularly fucked, because not one time, I mean, me included, not one time did I ever hear my grandfather say, like, okay, it's gonna be a good year, crops looking good,
right?
You know, the rain's perfect, you know what I mean? Like, it's not too wet, not too dry, you know what I mean? We've had enough sun. Do you know what I think I'm gonna do, Ethel? I think I'm gonna buy the dually. That's what I think I'm gonna do this year. I think we're set up real well for this. And you know what I think we should? I think we should go on a holiday. That's what I think we should do. This is really good. Not one time. And because there was such a narrative, you know, 2 generations ago for sure, that you had to be prepared for all the things that could go wrong, right? For a hard winter, for getting the garden off in time, for building the things. And all of those things were true, right? So, like, let's fucking think about all the things so that we will be prepared for it.
Yeah.
And the issue is, we are playing by a set of rules that was established for a world that no longer exists.
Ooh. Well, I was just about, as you were saying that, I was like, the way they prepared, I'm assuming, right, is they were preparing the way they were because in some dramatic instances, it was like life or death. Like, it was like,
not even some dramatic.
If we don't have a garden, we don't have food this winter. Whereas now we're like, we're preparing in a way that we don't need to, because we've actually really bubble wrapped ourselves in life.
Those of us with privilege are.
Yes.
Yes. And I think that's truly, you know, and the vast majority of the people who will listen to this podcast, who will, you know, run in our circle, certainly come in this position of privilege, which, you know, again, if we want to figure out our purpose, it is really to create a world where we can serve those who do not have privilege. And so part of this conversation is about, okay, so when you are most regulated, you're at your best self. So you can teach your son how to be regulated. Right. So I can teach my kid what's important in inclusion and anti-racist work. And that when we are very successful in our life, it's because we can give and support and love and serve and do all those things. Huh? But I think that, you know, the point so much about, you know, when we get stressed and overwhelmed is we go back to the way it's always been done, because that's the only script we know.
Yes.
But if we're playing by a set of rules that was established for a world that no longer exists, then it really begs the question about what are those rules as a mother today? What are the rules for kids these days? What do husbands these days need the most? What, you know, what does a leader these days mean? Which is really where I spend the vast majority of my time, you know, thinking about things. And I really think, you know, to your earlier question, other than agency and gratitude, it really is around acknowledgement. When I'm in a position of acknowledging, I mean, the whole middle chapter of Feeling Seen, or middle section of Feeling Seen, is about the answer to it all, which is really acknowledgement. Because we were never meant to do any of this alone. And acknowledgement's a tricky thing. If you are in a position to truly acknowledge another human being, I know you're regulated. So it's like the 007 backwards trick. If I tell you the only thing I want you to be really thoughtful of in the next days and weeks, listeners, this is for you, be very conscious of how you acknowledge those around you. Then I know that gift that we've just had this conversation about will put you in a place of emotional regulation. Because if I say you need to wave to people 3 times today, right? I don't care if you're at a stoplight or if you're in a grocery store or if you're in this parking lot, you got to do that 3 times today. Okay. So I now know that you've now been given that task. You cannot be dysregulated and wave to somebody else, right? If you're just like, holy fuck, I'm going to die, or I fucking hate everybody, and you're waving at people, like you can't, right? Like, yeah. So I know you're required to do that. And you know what's really interesting? Okay. So waving is one good thing, but the other thing, I just have to tell you this story because this happened yesterday. I was in Saskatoon in the airport hotel because I spoke in Weyburn, and then I had to stay in Saskatoon before I came here, and then I go to Hudson Bay tomorrow, so this is like our big Saskatchewan tour. Right. But I was in the Marriott by the airport, and I woke up and I like did a workout, and like my gym stuff is still so like fucking tight because I did nothing but eat for the last 6 months, and so I have like I look like a sausage. My hair is like kind of in a ponytail, but like kind of falling out. And I had a meeting up in the room, so I just wanted to grab a coffee and a breakfast so I could just take back up to the hotel room, right? So I'm sitting in this thing, and like all the businessmen that are gonna obviously fly out on the airplanes are like coming down, and they all look like really smartly dressed on the things in there. Like here I am like sitting in the corner like, holy fuck. And I noticed this one particular man, he was sitting by himself at the like sort of breakfast bar thing, and he's like sitting up at the counter, and I was thinking to myself, like, he looks so nice today. Like, I love his shoes. He really thought about that. And like, he works out. Like, look at his fucking arms. Like, he's so handsome. And he's like probably like 30, late 30s or 40s. Okay. And so I got up and I was like, I'm going to tell him. So I went over and I just said, excuse me, can I talk to you for a second? And he's like, uh-huh. Like, you, okay, imagine, right? So like, I am this like sausage Ukrainian 5 foot fuck all bird. And I was like, I just want to tell you, I think you look really great today. And I said, I tell this to women all the time, but I never tell this to men. And I just wanted you to know, I think you look amazing today. He's like, well, bless your heart. And I was like, so you're from the East Coast, hey? And I said, I hope you have a good day. And I just like, and then what's interesting to me is then I like, I want to get the fuck out of there. Like, then I'm like, oh my God. I'm pushing the elevator button, like, get on. But it just made me realize, like, how little it takes.
Yeah.
Yes.
To truly acknowledge another human. And that put me in such a good place. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't feel attractive in any way. I didn't feel, I mean, I guess I was proud of myself that I went to the gym. Like, all of those things were like sort of in my head at that moment. But I was also like, there's nothing redeeming about this little get up today. And then when I gave that away to him, I was sort of like, I like floated out of the restaurant, and I was like, that's acknowledgement.
I have been an entrepreneur for many years, and I will admit that I have leaned into hustle culture in my early business years until I lived and learned the impact that burnout had on me physically, mentally, and emotionally, and how the effects of burnout trickled into my family and myself. I need to introduce you to Boundaries Over Burnout and business coach and founder of the Hustle Culture Hater Club, Heather Kehoe. Experiencing heavy burnout in her own career led Heather to reevaluate and make some big changes within herself in order to live the life she wants, which meant kicking burnout to the curb, implementing and embracing boundaries, and recognizing where she was creating chaos in her life. If you want to lean into freedom in your life and out of the grind, get clear on how you want to feel, and need some support on getting there, I really encourage you to check out Heather's 4-week Boundaries Over Burnout Reset program. This includes one 60-minute Zoom call with Heather each week for 4 weeks, and we have an exclusive discount code for you. Use the code HER100 to get $100 off your 4-week reset. You can find Heather on Instagram at @TheRealHeatherKehoe and check out her amazing content, or find all the information you need on her website, thehchc.com, which stands for the Hustle Culture Haters Club. Remember to use the code HER100 to save $100 off your 4-week Boundaries Over Burnout Reset program, and we will link it all in the show notes. I think it's so funny because we often will think these things and hold on to them and then just move on. But I love that you stopped and you did that. And probably he's told 50 people about, well, he's a man, so who knows. But I remember
I love it.
Going through the Wendy's drive-thru one time, and the girl, I pulled up and I gave her my card, and she's like, you look so pretty today. And I was like,
do you want to make out?
Thank you. And that was probably 3 years ago, and I still think about it once a week. And I'm like, remember that time? Like, because that was 3 years ago. But it's an example.
She hasn't gotten another one
right?
since.
No.
Right?
Megan, we compliment you.
I know. Do you remember in the Costco?
But it's sometimes it's like it's strangers when you do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, of
It's
course
the
we
ones
say it to
that
each other, and I
stand
kind of
out.
feel like you have to tell me that.
Yeah.
Well, and I just remember that often. I think about like, okay, don't hold on to it, because remember that time the Wendy's drive-thru girl told me I look pretty, and then
you know what though? Sometimes I even feel like it's an out-of-body experience for me. Like when I was like sitting there to that guy, I was like, all of a sudden I was standing up beside him and talking to him, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit of a like, if you let the universe kind of guide you in that way, it just will sort of take you to the people that need it the most that day. And I've also seen other people that I'm sort of like, I should, no. And not because I don't think they deserve it, but maybe they just can't receive it in that way, or this just might not be their best time, or like whatever that is, right? So I think there's an intuitive sense to that, but I think as long as it's the universe and not you going like, oh, I don't think it's going to matter, right? Like I think those are two very different things. But I think like, my God, if there's anything you can do today to make your life better, acknowledge another human being.
That's so good.
Wow. I want to like segue for a quick, I love this, but I do want to segue because I want to talk a little bit about burnout with you.
Yeah. And we need it, Jody.
CJ and I were sitting outside, like having a little coffee just in between and like going through your book a little bit, and you called it the buzzword of the decade.
Correct.
Right? So I just want you to go off on burnout a little bit.
I love it.
She's like, you don't have to tell me twice.
I'm going to talk about it last night too. Okay. So here's the thing that I love the most about burnout. Indicative of the theory, indicative of the name of the theory, burnout. It means that at one point there was a flame.
Oh. Okay.
You can't burn out from something that you didn't once love.
Okay.
I've literally never heard it like that before. Continue.
You just blew my mind.
Seriously.
I literally she was like watching me. I was like, I love that.
Right? Yeah. And like, so Freudenberger came up with this theory in 1974 or something like that. So the theory itself is 50 years old. And his original sort of theory was based on work with a drug addicted population. Okay. And he started to, observe people who would use excessively to the point of burnout. Right. So we would call, drug addicted people, like this guy's a burnout, this woman's a burnout,
Yes.
And he said it was interesting to me because like they once were joyful people, really connected to their lives, and then would use to the point of, just really numbing. Right. And so he said, I started to observe that in organizations. Right. And so the definition then becomes a place where like when the stuff outside of work, that is meant to fill your soul isn't greater than what gets sucked from your soul at work, you burn out, which is like shocking. Like you don't put enough gas in your car, it stops driving.
Yes.
You're an entrepreneur, right? And if your expenses don't every once in a while come in a little less than your income, right? Your business fails.
Yeah.
And this is true in organizations, right? And so we have for a very long time tried to separate work from home. And I think there was a time in our history where that made sense. But again, we were playing by a set of rules that was established for a world that no longer exists. It is impossible to separate work from home, particularly post-pandemic, where many of us as entrepreneurs or otherwise work from home in a particular way, and our offices are in our homes. Our children are very much a part, or our partners are very much a part of what we do, which is not unlike a farming community, the way that I grew up in, it was a family business. My grandparents had to navigate their roles together. And, my husband and I are in business together. And I mean, it almost fucking killed us because it's my company, and how we, set that up. Like, I mean, Marty would be in many meetings going like, okay, mom and dad are fighting. And I'm like, okay, you listen, look at my eyes. I'm the fucking boss. Okay. Yeah. And he's like, that doesn't fly. You cannot say that. And I'm like, well, do you want me to say it louder? Because I don't think you're hearing me.
Yeah.
And so navigating that becomes so critically important. But the whole purpose of the theory of burnout, right, is really like, how do we get back to that flame? Mm-hmm. And how do we get back to the best parts of ourselves, which is really where I think the answer is. Because I've never met a person who doesn't love what they do and is happy in their life.
Okay, wait, say that again.
I've never met a person who, hates what they do and is happy in their life.
Got it.
They love what they do and they're happy, and it's a correlation.
There is something really a lot about, and it doesn't have to be, and here's the problem. So I had this conversation with my brother not very long ago, and we were talking about purpose and passion and all those things. Okay. So my brother is 3 years younger than me. We couldn't be more different. Like, he barely made it out of high school, he rodeoed his way through most of his life, worked the rigs. Like, he was just like, we would always be like, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? He's like, I'm going to be the best I can be. And that was his answer all the time. I loved it. And in grade 10, I knew I was going to be a doctor. I knew exactly where I was going to go. I had like a very clear direction. There was never a question in my life. I was going to be the top of everything that I did. Master's wasn't good enough. I needed a PhD. I was going to get a scholarship and everything. And I did. All of those things happened. And and he is equally, if not more successful than I am in this moment. And he says to me, so he has one of the companies that he owns is a tree moving company. And so I said to him, you know, it's really about purpose and passion in this world. And he's like, oh, so many people want passion. And I'm like, I know, but passion rides shotgun to purpose. If you know why you do what you do, if you are clearly about the difference that you can make every single day, it doesn't fucking matter what you do. You're going to do it with all your heart. And he's like, that's not true. Like, it's really easy for you. You can talk about, like, yeah, you get to go on stages and people are like, oh my God, you're amazing. And they want to sign your book, and you like say fun things and nice things. And like, people pay you money to tell them they're fucking great. And he's like, of course you're going to find purpose in that work. He's like, how do I find purpose as a tree mover? And I'm like, okay, time out. It is so much about whether you feel your contribution in your particular company, whatever that is, can change the life of somebody. Tomorrow, you drive into a farmer's yard who wants you to move 3 trees. And he's been married for 40 years to the same woman. She's got cancer, and their 2 babies don't live at home anymore. And you drive into this yard, and you're going to move these 3 trees. And you pop out of your truck, and you're like, this is phenomenal. Did you build this yourself? This yard's beautiful. And tell me about these trees. Oh, yeah, I want to move them a little bit out of the way, you see, because my wife is, she can't leave the house very much. And I just really want to make sure that she has a view of our lake. And you could say to him, you're phenomenal. What an amazing husband you are, right? And what if I told you that he had thoughts about taking his own life today? And you just came into his world and you told him how amazing the thing that he just built here is and what a good partner he is. He hadn't heard that in 20 years. And you not only changed a life, you just saved one. Can you do that every day? Can you do that every day in your truck? I talk to lots of people every day. I don't have a fucking clue if they like me or hate me. And they tell me that I'm just terrible because I swear all the time. So how do we say people feel so much about like, oh, I should start like a nonprofit or a
comparison,
right?
Yes.
Like, do not underestimate your power to be able to find the purpose in what you do. And, the purpose is the antidote to burnout.
That's good.
Well, I think there's so much truth to that, right? And I think that, it's really about that place that we talked about earlier, agency and gratitude, right? So there's people in a bunker in Ukraine right now teaching their babies. There's people who are, living under a bridge in the city that, we're going to go home to tonight. Like, I think that there is this place always of how do you sink into wherever you're at? And again, switch that narrative from these are all the things that can go wrong to what are the things that are going well. And I think that's a practice. I think that is something we're not notoriously good at. We are very good at everything else, finding everything that's wrong, right? Because, misery doesn't love company. Misery loves miserable company. So if you take a look at the group of friends that you're with, right, this is always a check for me, right? Am I often having the conversations about how terrible this is and how fat we are and how awful our partners are? Fuck, I'm not interested in that anymore. Yeah. I'm married to somebody who's pretty amazing, and I'd like to throw punch him 90% of the time. But if I stay with a lot of people, like one of the most contagious experiences is divorce. There's a big high correlation between when one best friend gets divorced, it increases exponentially the risk of the other, not the risk or the result of the other. And it's true in terms of like our ability to commiserate around what we don't have and what could be better and what should be better. And it's really this switch of I'm not by any means suggesting that we just should stay in unhealthy places or but it's really about, I think, our ability, particularly as women, to lead the charge, because we come with an emotional language. And I talk about this so often, and we're going to talk about this a lot tonight, is the future's female. And I have 2 sons and a daughter, and this isn't about penises or vaginas. This is really about what multiple generations have given us, the gift of emotional language. And we are such a disconnected society, and so we need people who can sew together relationships with words. And we have that much more, generally speaking, than men.
Well, and maybe this ties into what you're already saying, but I'm curious on what is something that like you're like either like a topic or a question or something that you're researching right now. Like what is going on in your mind that's something that's circulating that you're like really curious about or like working through right now?
That's such a good question. I'm so interested in the idea of, what we talked about earlier, the role clarity and the freedom.
Okay.
And what the responsibility is for women, the onus that will fall on us, and how we describe that narrative not as a burden, but a time to rise, a permission to take a seat at the table, not another thing we have to carry because nobody else can figure their shit out. And I struggle with how to say that in a way that doesn't come off as, just do fucking more, try harder, versus like, oh, no. This is our time to shine. You take a seat at the table.
Well, what I hear from that is we get to have agency and choice over what it is we're owning. And I think that there's a piece of standing up and vocalizing that, whether that's at work or in the home or to ourselves, that maybe we're avoiding. And instead just kind of quietly shouldering it and shouldering the load instead of taking ownership of it and then taking the pieces that we no longer want to carry and passing them off and having those conversations.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, and are you thinking that there's going to be a new, I don't know if I'm going to say this wrong and really mess this up, so go with me here. But like, we're almost talking about how there was such role clarity before. Like, are you thinking there's going to be a new way of like role clarity going forward? And we're in that sort of like transitional phase of like figuring out what that looks like as a society or a Western society or a world.
100%. And I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon. I think that the biggest injection of what the world needs right now is empathy, because in any time of transition or change, or how do we identify, or what pronouns can we use, or how can women show up this way, or what do we need from men? Highest rate of suicide in this province is middle-aged men. And I truly believe emotions won't kill you, but talking about it might, not talking about it might. And so when you don't have an emotional language, right, and you don't have anywhere to put it, you're just fine. Boys don't cry. We're good. We're cool. The onus is then really on us to be able to provide that space and to be able to know that what we need at the table isn't brute force or strength or infrastructure or suck it upness. We actually need let's slow it down, right? Tell me more. No, back to the table. Let's figure this out, right? And I think that we're very skilled, generally speaking, at that, and we just need to do it more.
Can you touch on the difference or the correlation or whatever it is of empathy and compassion? And then I would love for you to touch on compassion fatigue.
Figley first came up with the term compassion fatigue, and Gabor Mate said there's no such thing as compassion fatigue. You don't get tired of the things you love, right? We serve the things we're born to do, which is to be compassionate human beings. Yeah. Okay. It's really this idea that if we don't look after ourselves, we can't continue to serve. And when we think about empathy, it's maybe my favorite thing on the planet, because it is a skill. None of us are born with it. You have to receive it in order to give it away. And empathy is the hardest thing you will ever do, because you have to step out of judgment, and we're really not very good at that. And so it's temporarily suspending judgment. Okay. And if I think about, this conversation around, how people identify right now, it's like we've come from a long generation of believing that there's a man. If you're a man, be a man. If you're a woman, be a woman. And when we're challenging that notion, or when people have different ideas about how they want to express their gender identity, if I believe that to the core of me, my ability to have empathy for somebody who wants to use the pronouns they, them will require me to temporarily suspend judgment. Doesn't mean I need to condone, support, believe, even agree with somebody else. See, that's empathy. It's very freeing, because you don't actually have to convince me of anything. I just have to try to get it. And if you have the capacity to be empathic, which means you don't take on another's emotion, you just try to get it. And compassion for me is something very different. It is feeling with someone. It is very much like diving into the emotion. And I want everybody to be compassionate towards other people. But I think a segue to compassion is empathy.
Well, I think compassion, it sounds like if we're doing it too much, which maybe leads into the fatigue part, is we're just like jumping in and feeling like everything, right? Whereas with empathy, you're trying to understand without jumping in and almost exhausting yourself in the process.
Yeah. I think context is a prerequisite for empathy. Like it's easiest to get to feel for someone or with someone when you know their story. And so often we don't, right? Like we see a kid as an attention-seeking manipulative liar, or we see this guy as a cheater, or this person who was in prison as a whatever, right? When I know their story, when I can tell you that this kid come from multiple generations of abuse, neglect, and trauma and never had anybody love them, it doesn't condone, support, or encourage the behavior in which they are in jail for, but now I get it. And why context is important is because empathy allows us a break from feeling like the world is terrible. Like I often think like empathy is another antidote to burnout. Right? Like I think about teachers all the time, right? When you just feel like you give and give and give and kids continue to be assholery-ish and their parents are jerks and like all these things happen, right? But when I have the story, when I have the empathy, I'll serve all day long.
Yeah.
I understand that this mama is like such a bitch because she was never welcomed in a school system. She survived the residential school system. School is not a safe place for her. She doesn't understand why she has to take her baby there 5 days a week because she knows what happens in schools. And so she never comes to parent teacher interviews. She never they don't have a lot of, whatever the deal is. Once I know that, okay, no problem. Do you want to meet me in the parking lot? Should we, can we go to Tim Hortons and talk about your kid? I'd love to buy you coffee. It doesn't condone the fact that she can't show up. It doesn't, support the whatever, but it is that thing that allows me to stay in the game. It doesn't burn me out.
Well, it makes us all human, right? Like it's that human connection piece that we circle back to.
I love the conversation around the human race is the thing that maybe I've learned the most when I was writing Feeling Seen, because you know what? I didn't really think about this. We all started in exactly the same place.
Yeah.
Every single human being felt the heartbeat of their mothers first. And race is a social construct.
Yeah.
The only reason your skin is a different color than somebody else's is because their ancestors lived closer to the equator.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
That's something. Our DNA is 99.98% same.
Wild.
And because of colonization, somebody decided that, one color of skin mattered more than the other, and our great grandchildren will pay the price for that.
Yeah.
So, right?
Yeah. Okay, last thing that I'm thinking on my mind to wrap some of this up is we talked about social media and the impact of social media on like our generation and like the kids' generation. And so I'm curious to hear a little bit of takeaway for the audience of how they can go about parenting children in this age of social media, and maybe even us as adults, your thoughts on how we can have a healthy relationship with social media as well.
Fuck if I know.
I know.
I
appreciate the honesty, which you'll always serve.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's so alluring. It's such a break. It's such, a place to land in this very overwhelming world. And I think that, the rules would say kids should have no more than an hour, 1 to 2 hours on a device a day. And I think about our babies that are like, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I think that the biggest issue is, every generation that's come before us has had something. The Beatles were going to be the thing that just fucking wrecked the whole world, and then it was the weed, and then it was, you watch Footloose, right? Like they were like, oh my God,
the dancing.
It's evil. And, that's certainly how, many people in my generation now talk about vaping and, weed pens and the TikTok. And I think that, all of these things will come to fruition in one way or the other. But I think what we don't know about, we fear.
Yeah.
And I think one of the greatest pieces of advice, for when your children know more than you do about something, get them to teach you. And you don't need to be proficient in the TikTok, and you don't need to be, understanding how to do the Snapchat and, all those things, but knowing about what it means to them and getting them to teach you and learning from them and watching their incitement and, what is a weed pen and like, how many flavors can you get in this thing? And like, this is the whole part of empathy when they're like, Mom, like weed is so much better for you than smoking. And so like, but you're 14, dude. Well, I don't know if it's not going to hurt my brain, Mom. I read about it. That's where empathy is really hard to do, right? Because you just want to throw punch them, and you're like, no, it's going to wreck your brain, and you're going to die, and everything's going to be terrible. And I think one of the easiest places to just hold some space and acknowledge that this is where they're at and that this is what they love to do in this particular reason because they want to fit in with everybody else is you just say, tell me more.
Mm-hmm. Speak their language.
Yeah, tell me more.
Yeah.
Teach me about it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean I'm going to condone, support, believe, but the more I can garner a prefrontal cortex, the more then I can have some ability to connect to them about that.
Yeah, that's good.
I have like... I'm going to have to go journal after this.
Everybody needs a nap. No, look at all of us. We're all like, and done.
No.
Okay, good.
Go.
Okay, so we always like to end our podcast by asking our guests if they can give us a piece of advice that they really love or that they've been given and have kind of like carried with them.
I think the thing that grounds me the quickest is the Ram Dass quote. And it hangs in my office and it's in every book I ever wrote. And when I read it, it took my breath away. He said, we're all just here walking each other home.
Yeah.
And it is really, truly as simple and as complex as that. When you recognize that that's all we're here for, nobody gets out of here alive, it simplifies things real quick for me, right? I'm going to give my babies the best I can, and some days it's going to be ugly. I'm going to do my best to be a committed, loyal, connected spouse, and if we make it, fucking perfect. If we don't, we'll figure that out too. We're just walking each other home, right? And so I think that's the thing that when I get overwhelmed and I feel like, is this world going to be okay? Then I think about that, and it takes me home.
Beautiful.
Let people know where they can find you, follow you, buy your book, connect with you, hire you, all the things.
Oh gosh, I would love that. I would love your community to be in our community. drjodycarrington.com is where the website is, and everything's connected there. We spend a lot of time on social, and we do a workshop every month. I really want to make the understanding of mental health much more accessible. And so we do a workshop every month, and then we launch our podcast. Everyone Comes From Somewhere.
Great name.
Isn't that fun? Yeah. Everyone Comes From Somewhere. It launches in October, and stay tuned for the episode of this trio because it's going to be good. It's going to be
honored.
Episode 25, I say.
Honored.
Woohoo!
Honored. Thank you so much, Jody.
Thank you
for
so
having me.
much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of the Her Podcast. If you want to follow along with us, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at its.her.podcast. We can't wait to see you there.
Bye.
Adios.